I've gotten calls from my counterparts across the country, and they always ask, how? How did this happen? And I always tell them it started with an exhibit and an incredible collaborator to enter this space for our community and really set the precedent of collaboration. Well, before I knew anything about dyslexia, I would regularly come to the DoSeum with my kids.
To hear this. The boys were with you.
Yeah.
And two of them were inside the bookcase, and they were doing their schoolwork.
Yes.
And we got to talking about youth and learning, literacy, phonemic awareness. I remember these conversations. I learned so much from you in this process of the really 5 years of our friendship. But I go back to the conversations that we have about learning, and we think continually about the learning progressions towards literacy and how can we build a path that has several places for kids to stop, reflect, to know themselves well as a learner.
So the exhibit was a strength-based exhibit where we featured local students telling their stories. And we started with their story before identification, and then their strengths and their successes that they had realized after intervention. And I think it was so important for us in developing it that every person that went through the exhibit found someone they identified with. And I think also hearing the students' voices took it to another level.
And it was a very intimate, it was a storytelling space, which is interesting because a lot of the work we're hoping to do in the future is based on narratives and translating stories, symbols into sounds. It was powerful. And that exhibit, it was regionalized, and you had so many people in the community who felt so strongly and identified. They became part of the exhibit, and it's kind of the high ideal of museum cultures where we can involve voices that sometimes are not represented. And it was powerful.
Well, when we first met and talked about the exhibit,
That's right.
the idea of starting a school was not even a part of the strategic plan. It just wasn't. And I remember walking into the DoSeum as we were working on the exhibit, and I would say, I'm never going to open a school, but if I were ever to open a school, I would want it to feel and be just like the DoSeum.
I really want kids to love learning, and we have to take risks in developing these models because we're asking children to take risks in their learning. And it's scary. Kids are so afraid of failure. They're so afraid to disappoint adults, peers. So we try to build a school model that has fibers in it, like a net, that we can catch them and keep them in this experience and feeling hope and optimism about learning. It's because it's hard enough when you don't struggle. I picture your work as this bright light of optimism for kids who are figuring out what school could be like. This model is really frontier thinking because it's designed so purposefully to meet kids where they are.
What a thrill it is to be able to offer to the community everything I wish I could have offered my children and wasn't available. And hopefully, if we do this right, by the time they have children in this community, this model can become normal.